This is the Clear Money Talk podcast, offering up creative solutions for your retirement future through education, choice, transparency, and empathy. Now, your host, CEO and founder of Clear Financial Partners, Tim Clairmont, and co-host, Tyler Andrews.
Hello and welcome to Clear Money Talk. My name is Tim Clairmont. I'm your host, founder and CEO of Clear Financial Partners. As always, I am here with our co-host, of course, Mr. Tyler Andrews.
Thank you, Tim. Happy St. Patty's Day.
Yeah, we're recording this on St. Patrick's Day. By the time you get this, St. Patrick's Day will have obviously have already passed, but that's the nature of it. We're thinking, green beer and Jameson and
something
Guinness
like that,
and all that fun times.
Or pinching people that aren't wearing green. Of course, I'm wearing green. Tim, where's your green?
That's a good.
At least
question.
lie. Say your socks are green or something.
Probably need to think that through a little bit. So my eyes do have some green in them. So it's like I always have green every day, all year long.
Not my favorite answer.
No, not my favorite answer either. I need to get some more green going on. Anyway, welcome to Clear Money Talk. Happy to answer your money-related questions. Yeah. And as usual, I have no idea what the money-related question is for today. So
you are about to find out quickly.
I am about to find out quickly. What do we have for today?
All right.
What are we talking about?
Topic is, are you prepared for the financial implications of a career change?
Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, that's a good thought. Yeah, many of our listeners are probably thinking about career changes. It seems to happen more and more often nowadays. At least, in the past, you would find people might be at an employer for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years even. Pension plans were more prevalent. By the past, I mean like 40, 50, 60 years ago. Mm-hmm. But in the last 20, 30 years, it's been a lot more common to have multiple careers. So I totally get that concept. And there are some major changes that need to be given consideration when you switch careers, because there's a lot of implications. So happy to talk through, getting people ready for that.
That sounds good. Yeah, whether you're gearing up for one yourself, you're trying to decide whether that's the next move you want to make in your financial journey, or if you know somebody, or if you've experienced this in the past and you have your own world, applicable experience to share. I think that's all awesome, and it's going to fit in perfectly with this podcast. So I have some kind of structure like normal. Do you want to go through that and then see if you had any additional thoughts that you wanted to add in with those, or
I think
you just want to riff?
Yeah. So I definitely want to lean into the structure, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other ideas that'll come to mind based on what has already been put forward that are not jumping out at me right now. However, the first thought that comes to my head, there's really two thoughts. One, I love the idea of creating variety in life and pursuing your vision of happiness. If you're unhappy with your current circumstances, owning that and saying, I'm going to take action and do something different. I'm going to go get a different situation. I think I'm a fan of owning your future and making your choices and deciding where you want to spend your minutes and getting the best experience out of life. And really, hopefully, using your best skill set to make the world a better place. And if your current employment situation isn't providing that opportunity for you, then maybe a career change does make sense. However, on the other hand, I think that that grass is always greener element. It makes sure that the things you're frustrated with in your current position aren't something that you're just going to experience in the new position anyway, or there may be some other disadvantages or upsetted circumstances in that new position that you don't anticipate. So thinking it through really carefully, I think is important when you make a career change. And if you've already just made a career change, obviously it is what it is. You already ripped the Band-Aid off. You've moved on. So we need to figure out, how do you make that the best place you want to make it? And maybe we have some conversations along those lines as well. So
I think I feel like a lot of people either make the decision strategically to change their job or their career, where they put a lot of thought, time, and effort into it, making sure that their change is going to align with their short-term and long-term vision of happiness and their goals. And all that. And I think the other half of people make the decision by ripping the Band-Aid and say, I'm done, today's the day, and they walk out. And I don't know if our podcast is going to be perfectly aligned with those individuals maybe listening and just ready to pull the ripcord at the next time your boss says something that you don't like. But for those people trying to plan strategically, I think this podcast and the topics that I want to talk about might hit on some of those key points to think about and give consideration to if you're in that boat. So
sounds good. What do you got for us?
All right, evaluating the financial impact, budgeting during transition, retirement plan considerations. That's what we do here. A lot of retirement income planning, healthcare and insurance, and then skill development and education costs. If there's additional continuing education or learning that you need to do for the new career path, and how you're going to tackle that is kind of the final thing. So let's start with evaluating the financial impact. I mean, this really comes down to income, the job stability, the benefits. Your benefit package is not usually just your income or your salary, but everything else that comes with it, whether it's fringe benefits or otherwise. If you work from home or you don't work from home, like those could all be seen as benefits. And I think that's the natural best place to start with this podcast.
Yeah, I think anytime you're making consideration between two choices, a classic T chart is a good approach. Grab a sheet of paper, put the line at the top, and write a big letter T on it. Line at the top, and then a line right down the middle. And
is that for Tim, or is that
T
for
it's T
Tyler?
T for Tim or Tyler or totally
T-chart.
awesome. Like whatever you want to call it. But as a T chart, it's mostly because it looks like a giant letter T on your page.
That's fair. Okay.
But yeah,
I had to be selfish.
That's good, Tyler. I got you though. So ultimately that T chart, have on the left side, your current job, and the right side your anticipated job, or vice versa. Either way, doesn't matter. But list all the pros and the cons on one side and the pros and the cons on the other side, and it'll help you make a really objective decision. It's so easy to make an emotional decision, and I'm not saying you shouldn't factor emotions in. Emotions are important. Obviously, if you're in an unhealthy work environment that is not good for you, whether it's at a physical level or emotional level or otherwise, that's something you probably need to give some serious consideration on improving and changing and owning that and figuring out how to make that not unhealthy. However, most of the time when people are making financial decisions, logic is typically the way that they're going to apply that. And if you're going to use logic, I'd say a T chart is a good starting place, and list out things just like what Tyler said. So what's the salary? What's the bonus potential? What's the job stability? Tyler mentioned that one pretty quick. That's pretty important, especially in this rapidly changing world. We have so much evolution that's occurring from these new LLMs and AI and advances in robotics and all of the new sci-fi stuff that's becoming real world for us. If you take a new job and a new career, you may find that you're the low man on the totem pole, pardon the expression from a gender standpoint, low woman, low man, low whatever on the totem pole. Point is that you might be the first to get cut if they need to make some cuts. And that job stability is important to give consideration to as well.
Yeah, well said. I don't really have much more to expand on that topic. I think, these are all the things that in your benefit package you have to weigh out to see if it makes sense for you and where you're heading towards. So give all that stuff consideration. The next is budgeting during transition.
Sure.
So
yeah,
depending on the length of the transition period for you switching jobs between that, whether you're going to leave your current job, spend time soul searching or finding that new job, or if you're going to jump directly from one job to the next, and what that time looks like for budgeting purposes. I mean, we all have to pay our bills, whether it's rent, your mortgage, whether it's groceries, utilities, whether it's childcare or other dependent care, whether it's being able to eat out or just have fun. Like all that stuff is very important, and taking the proper, budgeting into account is very important, especially when you're changing jobs. Changing jobs brings a certain level of uncertainty. With uncertainty, the best way to tackle uncertainty is by proper planning. So just making sure that you understand where money's going to be coming from, where it's going to be going, what the expenses might be during that interim, especially if you're going to be living on a different salary at your new job or a different income structure, understanding what those differences look like. The best way to do that is with the T-chart or a spreadsheet. I mean, I personally use a spreadsheet to track all of my expenses, variable expenses and fixed expenses. So I always know every given month, every given year, every given quarter, how much I need to have coming in that needs to be going out, and where I can cut stuff, it becomes abundantly clear, and that just helps in the whole planning process. So a lot of people I come across have no clue what is going out, what's coming in. They just know that they usually have enough coming in to cover what's going out, and that works for some people. It could also be very problematic for other people, and especially if you're in a situation where you might be changing jobs, that could potentially be problematic. So getting a good finger on the pulse with all that stuff, it might help make that transition at a very sensitive part of your life a little bit easier.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think you really said it all, Tyler, is when it comes to budgeting. I mean, just paying attention and, planning for that gap. It is a neat opportunity for you to do two things. One, you can really see what it's like to, quote, tighten the belt during that period of life and see how tight you can get your expenses, how inexpensively can you survive, so you can learn what your base level of real expenses are to support the lifestyle that you have in mind. So that is kind of like going on a diet, but maybe going on a diet for your money spending is a good thing to give consideration to, so that you don't have as big of a financial hurdle to experience, or you don't want to try to go into a bunch of debt during that interim if you can avoid it. So tightening the belt's helpful. The second thing to think about is actually using that opportunity to reflect and realize this is what retirement is. You have no income from a job. That's what retirement is. Imagine that you have that going on, not for a couple of months or a couple of weeks even, but for 30 or 40 or 50 years. That's what we prepare people for. And if you don't have enough income to support your lifestyle without the job, you are not yet financially independent. So becoming financially independent means you have enough money that you do not need to work anymore. You don't have to worry about that paycheck. You have enough wealth that you can support an income stream that you're happy with, you're comfortable with, and you can do that in perpetuity. And by perpetuity, I do definitely encourage you to think about whatever you're thinking as far as longevity is concerned. Like, add another 10 to 30 years, because people are living longer and longer and longer. And a lot of times what we're doing is we're planning for clients that want to live into their hundreds, that want to live a healthy lifestyle into their hundreds. What does that look like? Now, you might think that's not going to happen to you, but look, it was only 100 years ago, the average life expectancy. People were passing away 150 years ago in their mid-30s, early 40s. I mean, we're already looking at 80s and 90s. The concept of retirement is already a norm for us. Who are we to think that in another 10 or 20 or 30 years we might not be living another 10 or 20 or 30 years longer? Make sure you have a good plan that's going to work for that too.
Yeah. Thanks for hitting on. I feel like most people have the pessimistic mindset when it comes to that stuff. They're like, oh, I'm going to die early. I don't need to worry about that. But then in reality, most people end up living longer than that, or they live much longer than they ever thought they were going to be. So if you die with money, I feel like that's a success story. If you die without any money, that means that was a failure at some part along the planning journey. So
good, well said. That's fair. Yeah. We don't have any clients in that second boat, and that's definitely
especially when it comes to our clients. If you pass away with money, I think you did something right.
Yeah. And if you want to spend your last dime on the day you die, we have plans for that too.
Yeah, you just got to tell us what that day is.
Yeah, we can strategize that. Well, actually, not necessarily. We actually have other strategies where you can continue to spend all of your money and have plenty of income coming in and still not leave anything behind if you don't want to leave it behind. But
that's a great point.
Anyway, we have plans for everybody, whatever their vision may be.
Okay, next.
Yeah.
Retirement plan considerations.
Sure.
So this is what we do on a day-to-day basis, and I think oftentimes this is where some people might overlook this step in a career change, because you might have a sweet setup at your current job, but the salary might be a little bit higher at this other job that might entice you to want to move, but maybe they have no retirement plan or they have no additional fringe benefits. It's just a higher salary and everything else is up to you to figure out. So taking into consideration the retirement plan considerations when it comes to what you're currently doing versus what the new job offers, I think is extremely important and probably somewhat overlooked. I guess this also curtails into another situation where it also might provide an opportunity where you might have an existing 401k or retirement balance at your current employer, and it gives you an opportunity to actually have more flexibility with what to do with that money if you leave that employer, because then you can consolidate, roll those funds over, and have a way larger breadth of investment options to use for that balance of money. So that's where my mind's going with this one. What are your thoughts?
I think that's on point. Yeah. I mean, the typical retirement accounts that you might see are 401k plans, and the contribution limits associated with that. Sometimes you might find something like a SEP or a Simple or a KEO or other kinds of defined benefit or defined contribution plans. You might have a pension plan. There might be a match. There might be a profit sharing contribution. There could be a vesting schedule on the profit sharing contribution. There may be immediate vesting in the match dollars. All of those things are factors that will allow you to either more aggressively reach your retirement goals, or that will ultimately not be assisting you much in your retirement, and it'll be more on you. So learning about, what does that vision look like, and how can you take advantage of the opportunities that are there. You may have stock option opportunities. Maybe you get stock options up front that are granted to you over a period of time. You may get stock options or employee stock purchase plan scenarios where you might be able to buy into ownership of the new company that you're working with. Stock options can be very complicated and have a lot of implications from a tax standpoint and from an over-concentration standpoint in your overall portfolio. Those are things that, you want to make sure you give some serious consideration to, and working with professionals that really understand all that is a great way for you to make that a lot easier on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the bottom line, don't leave anything on the table. I'm happy you said vesting. So a lot of employers, the matching contributions will vest over time, whether it's a 5-year graded schedule or whether they kind of waterfall invest all at once. Whatever the structure that employer decided to set up for their vesting is important to give consideration to. You might think all that money is yours, and the second you walk out the door, it's yours to take with you, and that's not always the case if you haven't worked there long enough. So just make sure you don't leave anything on the table. Don't make that the primary reason you don't leave a job, though. I think there are plenty of situations where leaving matching dollars on the table and leaving that behind to pursue a better opportunity long term can be in someone's best interest. But again, just don't leave and then figure out later that, I left money on the table and I would have changed my plan if I had known about that. So
that's right.
Yeah.
And as I think about that, I mean, the other thing is we always talk about maximizing the ROI, return on investment of your dollars. We want to make sure you're optimizing your investments and all of your portfolio as you're working with that. We do that on a regular basis. But we're also focused on maximizing the ROI on your minutes. We only have so much time on this planet. We only have so much time. We don't know how long it's going to be. I do think it's going to be a really long time, and I'm a fan of living a long time and having a nice, long, healthy lifespan. But fundamentally, we still have 1 minute less after that minute goes by. And making sure you're maximizing the ROI in your minutes is about having quality of life and having the kind of lifestyle you want. And you can choose the right profession that can give you quality of life, maximize the ROI in your minutes, and simultaneously achieve your retirement income goals by optimizing the ROI in your dollars.
What's that Queen song? You said long time, and I just got that in my head now. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. Or no, that's not Queen,
is it?
Not Queen.
I can't imagine.
Elton John.
I'm imagining Queen singing that now, though.
Elton
That would
John?
be pretty.
Am I gonna get
entertaining,
copyrighted for singing a song?
No. You're totally okay there.
Okay. They're like, no one's gonna think it's the same.
No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, just keeping everyone entertained.
Time. Yeah,
it's a good one.
Rocket
Man.
That's Rocket Man. That's Elton John. That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
See?
Yeah, no, that's solid.
We just problem solved that.
Good stuff.
All right.
You're gonna have to choose a different trivia question if that was your trivia question.
No.
All right.
No overlap there.
Got it.
Healthcare and insurance. This is another thing that sometimes some employers can have really sweet setups for a great setup when it comes to insurance and all those additional benefits, whether it's disability insurance. Some employers offer group life insurance. Some offer long-term care insurance for very cheap discounts because it's a group policy. All these different things that the employer provides to your benefit. And if the new job that you're seeking out doesn't offer an equivalent level of benefits, just be aware of that. Again, I don't want to say that's a make or break situation, but it's something to be aware of. There's also, if you're going to be in a transitionary period for a period of time between your current job you're leaving to the new one, understand things like COBRA. It's ways to basically keep your other employer's health insurance for a period of time while you're in a limbo. Just understand your state's rules and where you live and how the employer and all that functions ties together. And I think that's something that people can overlook, and especially if you're somebody that might already have pre-existing conditions, whether it comes to health or family or otherwise, you might be grandfathered into certain provisions and benefits that once you leave and then you have to reapply and requalify for certain things, that could potentially be a negative surprise. So just make sure that if you fall into any of those categories that I just mentioned, that you take that into account when you're weighing out the pros and the cons of staying at your current job or leaving. Yeah.
That's good, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other.
No,
obviously that's a meaty topic. Insurance, health insurance, like that's heavy stuff.
It is. I think it's actually the number one cause for bankruptcy in the United States as well, too, is failure to have health insurance and having these unexpected medical expenses that your insurance doesn't cover. So don't plan on going without coverage in your break and don't plan on just ignoring health coverage if you end up in a new job that maybe doesn't provide health benefits. That is something that is really, really important, and making sure that you have adequate health coverage to support your family is important. If you're married, it's possible that you've been covered under your plan, your spouse has been covered under their plan, and there might be opportunities for you to lean into your spouse's plan for coverage for yourself that might be even better for you than the new opportunity in the new job. So consider all the resources available to you, not only your plan at your old job, your plan at the new job, but also what your spouse's plan may look like, and what the state plans are available as well, as Tyler was just sharing. So,
Yeah. Well said.
All right.
Last is skill development and education costs. This one's a little ambiguous, but it's like if you have to acquire new skills, new certifications, go get a master's program or something like that to be able to work in this new job capacity, those are things that you have to take into consideration, whether it's the financial expenditure for that, which that's kind of the primary point of this podcast is, are you ready for that financial implications of a job change or career change? But also just the time expenditure, the stress, the having to deal with it, whether you have to deal with it before you get the job and apply for it, or whether you have to get it right after you get it, hired. That's very common in our industry specifically. You usually will get a job offer, and then you have a certain amount of time to get licensed and get all your credentials that are necessary to perform the job functions of what we do. So I'm sure many other jobs and job functions have a similar career path and career structure. Sometimes those are covered expenses, sometimes they're not. Just depends on what your path looks like on the way you're going.
Yeah, it's good. It might be on-the-job training. It might be on-the-job licensure opportunities and credentials, and that may be a part of the package that you're giving consideration to. It may be a prerequisite in order for you to get into the career that you want, and if you don't have time to get that accomplished in your while you're still working at your current employer to try to get yourself ready to make that transition, then you may need to figure out how to do that during that transition period. And what does that look like? And how long is that? And how much is that going to cost? And does it make sense to pay out of pocket and cover that yourself? Or do you maybe need to borrow a little bit of money to deal with the additional educational expenses that are necessary to get you ready for that next career? All of those are going to get factored in, and they can affect your analysis. So you might need an extra page on that T-chart as you continue to break it down. Don't be afraid to flip the page and have 2 or 3 or 4 pages of the T-chart. Just stay consistent with one side being one plan and the other side being the other plan.
I like the T-chart. That's a great approach. Okay, that's all.
Yeah, I think it's a good. It's a good meaty recap of some of the basic things to give consideration to. If you think about all that stuff, I feel like you'll be better prepared than if you don't think about that stuff. And why don't you give us just the answer today, Tyler?
I felt like that was coming.
You did.
I love doing just the answer. Okay. Buckle up, tune in, here we go. Our topic of the day was, are you prepared for the financial implications of a career change? So Tim and I talked about really 5 different things to give strong consideration to if you're in the boat of somebody saying, you know what, I don't love my current job, more long-term, I'm thinking about switching careers for X, Y, or Z reasons. These are some things that you should at least think about, give consideration to, and it should hopefully help you in the decision-making process of whether that career change is something that you're going to want to move forward with or not. So the first thing we talked about was evaluating the financial impact. So this is usually the first place people go to decide whether they want to change jobs or change careers or anything along those lines. Am I going to make similar or more income? What are the benefits package going to look like in my current job versus my new one? Is that more worthwhile, less worthwhile? Do I get to work from home? Do I have to go into an office? All that stuff weighs into really the financial impact, the very first direct financial impact that you will feel, because a lot of that comes to your take-home pay. How much am I going to have to spend and save and all that other stuff? So evaluating the financial impacts, number one. The second thing we talked about was budgeting. So especially if you're going to be having a transition period between leaving your current job and finding a new job, or maybe you get hired in a new job, but there's maybe a month or 30 or 60 days before you're going to have your first day at the new job. So you have 30 to 60 days of budgeting to take into consideration. You still have expenses that likely need to be paid and met, and figuring out how you're going to cover those things during that weird transitionary period is important. Give consideration to it. Look at your budget. Look at how much you're spending. Look at how much you have coming in. Do you need to save a little bit before you leave your current job and try to find that next one? Or do you have enough saved already where you feel comfortable that you could pay out of pocket for some things in that meantime? So just make sure that your budgeting during that transition period is accounted for. Third thing was retirement plan considerations. So we do retirement income planning. So it's obviously one of the bullets we had to include on this podcast, talking about things like Do you have a retirement plan at your current employer? Are you going to have one at the new employer? What are the pros and the cons of the differences between those two employment plans? Is one a 401k and one's a simple IRA? Is one a 403b and one's a SEP IRA? Understanding the contribution limits, how those different plans are similar and how they're different. Understanding how it's going to potentially impact you and your financial journey, both positively and maybe negatively, is all things that you should be aware of before you make that transition. Healthcare and insurance is the other thing we talked about, arguably one of the more important things to think about. Tim said that one of the biggest reasons a lot of people have to file bankruptcy is because of healthcare debt. So don't be in the camp where you don't have coverage. Make sure that if you do have coverage at your current employer, make sure that the new employer has some sort of coverage available to you. If they don't, make sure you have a plan in place for how you're going to pay out of pocket to make sure that you're covered yourself. There's plenty of programs, and whether they're privately funded or government funded, things like COBRA and others, to make sure that you can have coverage at times when you aren't working. So look into all those things and figure out what's going to make sense for you. Last thing we talked about was skill development and education costs. Certain careers do require additional learning, additional certifications, education, things like that. That all comes with time and money expenditure to get those things. So figuring out if this new job is going to be one of those things that you have to acquire a new skill or a new degree or advanced learning to be able to work in that field. Just understanding that's important, to understand the impact to you, whether you're paying for it or whether the new employer is going to be paying for it. And taking all that into account, I think, will make for a more stress-free and efficient transition to that new job, whatever that might be for yourself. So that's just the answer.
Boom.
Done.
Drop the mic. Well
Did
done,
I miss
Tyler.
anything?
No, that's solid. I got nothing. Well, I mean, of course, there was all the meat that we expounded on during the full version.
I did miss a lot, so you go listen to it.
Go listen to the full version, because the full version's got even more expansiveness. And
it's got good stuff.
You probably don't have to also slow it down. But then again, maybe you do. So we talk fast here, and we cover a lot of good thoughts together. So no, I think that's good. Well done.
Thanks. Yep, sounds good. All right, trivia.
All right.
And as we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, it is a holiday, St. Patrick's Day. Oh. I got to stay in the spirit of that. Okay. So you ready for a St. Patty's Day oriented trivia question?
Sure. So the answer is either like leprechaun or Guinness or green, pot of gold or rainbow or something.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. What do you got?
All right. According to Irish folklore, what should you never do if you catch a leprechaun?
Ooh. What should you never do if you catch a leprechaun?
I have multiple choice answers for you.
Oof. I mean, I'm curious. I don't know the answer to that, other than my gut would say, well, I wouldn't let him go until he shows me his pot of gold or grants my wishes. Mm-hmm. But so as far as let him go, I guess would be like don't let him go. But it's probably something funky like don't tell him your name or something, because then he can do weird stuff with it or something. Anyway, what do you got? Give me the multiple choice.
Okay. One is ask for gold.
Don't ask for gold. That's what they're saying? Definitely.
Yeah. What should you never do?
Do not ask for gold. Okay, got it.
2 is take your eyes off him.
Okay.
3 is give him a 4-leaf clover.
Oh.
And 4 is offer him a drink.
Never offer him a drink. Never give him a 4-leaf clover. Never ask for gold, and never take your eyes off him. I mean, my personal response is I wouldn't take my eyes off him. If I actually met a leprechaun, that would be the very first thing I would focus on doing. But I feel like that's just a little bit too simple for Irish folklore. So as much as that's my gut reaction, and I probably should just go with my gut and say never take your eyes off him, I'm going to go with something like don't ask him for his gold, because maybe he's going to give you something else, and I'd say, maybe don't ask him for his gold.
Okay. You should have stuck with your gut.
I should have stuck with my gut. Don't take your eyes off him. Okay.
Don't take your eyes off him, because the Irish folklore goes, if you catch a leprechaun, you must never take your eyes off him or he will disappear.
Oh, there you go.
You gotta.
That's it.
You gotta focus on that.
As soon as you look at your friend to say, check out what I caught, boom, leprechaun's
gone.
Okay. All right. Well, if you catch a leprechaun, good on you.
Yep.
If you happen to win the lottery or come into a large pot of gold in some other capacity, give us a call.
That's right. How can they reach us?
That's what we do. Give us a call. 503-579-1000 is our phone number. 503-579-1000. You can also find us on the internet.
Yep.
And get a clarity call, 15 minutes with us, and we can give you some clarity around your overall financial circumstances and see if you might be a good fit for somebody that we can continue to work with.
Yeah. This was a fun one.
Yeah.
They're always fun.
Yeah,
and we appreciate you guys tuning in. We look forward to the next one and all the ones to come in the future. And
Until next time.
Thanks
for joining us on Clear Money Talk.
Tim Clairmont and Tyler Andrews are investment advisor representatives offering securities and advisory services through Ceteri Advisor Networks LLC, a broker, dealer, and registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Ceteri is under separate ownership from any other named entity. The views depicted in this material are for information purposes only and are not necessarily those of Ceteri Advisor Networks LLC. They should not be considered specific advice or recommendations for any individual. For a comprehensive review of your personal situation, always consult with a tax or legal advisor. Neither Ceteri Advisor Networks LLC nor any of its representatives may give legal or tax advice. All investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will be successful. Examples referenced are hypothetical only and do not represent the actual performance of any particular investments. Converting from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. A Roth IRA offers tax-free withdrawals on taxable contributions. To qualify for the tax-free and penalty-free withdrawal or earnings, a Roth IRA must be in place for at least 5 tax years, and the distribution must take place after age 59.5 or due to death, disability, or a first-time home purchase up to a $10,000 lifetime maximum, depending on state law. Roth IRA distributions may be subject to state taxes. Distributions from traditional IRAs and employer-sponsored retirement plans are taxed as ordinary income and, if taken prior to reaching age 59.5, may be subject to an additional 10% IRS tax penalty. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks and charges, and expenses of mutual funds and ETFs carefully before investing. The prospectus, which contains this and other information about the funds and ETFs, can be obtained directly from the company or from your financial professional. The prospectus should be read carefully before investing or sending money. A diversified portfolio does not assure a profit or protect against loss in a declining market. Dollar cost averaging will not guarantee a profit or protect you from loss, but may reduce your average cost per share in a fluctuating market. Investors cannot invest directly in indexes. The performance of any index is not indicative of the performance of any investment and does not take into account the effects of inflation and the fees and expenses associated with investing. Although it is possible to have guaranteed income for life with a fixed annuity, there is no assurance that this income will keep up with inflation. There is a surrender charge imposed generally during the first 5 to 7 years or during the rate guarantee period. There is a surrender charge imposed generally during the first 5 to 7 years that you own the contract. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may result in a 10% IRS tax penalty in addition to any ordinary income tax. The guarantee of the annuity is backed by the financial strength of the underlying insurance company. Investment sub-account values will fluctuate with changes in market conditions. An investment in a variable annuity involves investment risk, including possible loss of principal. Variable annuities are designed for long-term investing. The contract, when redeemed, may be worth more or less than the total amount invested. Variable annuities are subject to insurance-related charges, including mortality and expense charges, administrative fees, and the expenses associated with the underlying subaccounts. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks, and charges and expenses of the variable annuity carefully before investing. The prospectus contains this and other information about the variable annuity. Contact Clear Financial Partners at info@clearfp.com or 503-579-1000 to obtain a prospectus, which should be read carefully before investing or sending money. The cost and availability of life insurance depend on factors such as age, health, and the type and amount of insurance purchased. Before implementing a strategy involving life insurance, it would be prudent to make sure that you are insurable by having the policy approved. As with most financial decisions, there are expenses associated with the purchase of life insurance. Policies commonly have mortality and expense charges. In addition, if a policy is surrendered prematurely, there may be surrender charges and income tax implications. Clear Financial Partners is located at 15573 Bangi Road, Suite 100, Lake Oswego, Oregon 97035. For more information, please call us at 503-579-1000.